So a little disclaimer before the podcast starts. This topic is about anti-vaxxing, anti-vaxxers, anti-vaccinations, whatever. Yes, this is directed mainly towards teens and schools, this whole podcast, but I want to point out, to adults as well. Please vaccinate your children. We don't want them to die at such a young age. And for us teens in the future, vaccinate your future children so that they don't end up dying at 5 or 6 due to fucking measles or anything else like that. That's the main thing I want to point out. And the second thing is that, hey, I'm not going to be talking a lot because my guests are actually doing a lot of research behind it. And this podcast is kind of more so in segments. So you'll see we're going to be diving into different topics every couple or so minutes. And they're going to be dominating most of the conversation. I'm completely fine with it because I'm not that knowledgeable on this whole topic because it's such a different thing that I do for this podcast. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed me not talking a lot. I hope you enjoy my guests talking a lot about this issue because it's definitely a prominent issue. And I hope you just enjoy the overall podcast. Thank you. Hello, welcome to What You Don't Hear, conversations about anything. And today's topic is going to be on anti-vaxxers. I have a new guest with me. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'm Jason. What to do?
And we have a recurring guest.
I'm Connor.
Yep, and he's also part of, I guess, the team for the podcast, just creating music for background stuff. You'll hear that on episodes like my more personal episodes or questions and advice. Anyways, let's roll the intro. So to start, I feel like most of the people that are listening to this podcast don't understand who or what anti-vaxxers are. So let's talk about what they are first, and then how it started. So I feel like some of you might know.
So basically, the anti-vaccine movement, for those of you that don't know, is basically there's no other way really to put this, but it's a bunch of people that just have tinfoil hats on, saying that the government is trying to control their babies or some shit.
And then they also believe that the vaccines would give their child's autism or some disease.
Measles?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
But it's a lot of it goes a lot of the modern day anti-vax movement goes back to a paper posted in the early 2000s, was it?
Probably around there something.
Yeah. I'll have to check the specifics, but where it basically linked vaccines to autism, but it was very quickly proven fraudulent. However, this didn't stop, the echo chambers of Facebook groups, for example, from latching onto it.
Yeah, and that paper is still used today that some people reference when it's publicly known that's fraud.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of it comes from the same sort of group as the people that film UFO videos or make conspiracy theories, not for fun, but actual conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the chemicals in the water turn into frogs gay sort of thing. I feel it's something people who would watch Alex Jones, for example, would get behind.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with uneducated people not knowing what diseases are or what measles is and how vaccines would come to challenge measles and destroy it, basically.
They don't realize how much... they don't realize how bad measles and smallpox and polio are because vaccines have prevented them for so long that the human race has basically forgotten about them, in a way. They've forgotten just how bad it is, and I feel like that's also part of the reason.
Yeah, and then there's the herd immunity where if one person isn't vaccinated because many other people are vaccinated, they'll think they're safe. But then when they go to other areas of the world where people aren't vaccinated, it just spreads the disease even more because they pick it up from those vaccinated people who won't be affected.
It doesn't prevent the disease. In general, the disease can still be in humans that are vaccinated. It just doesn't hurt them. That's what vaccines do. They prevent you from getting sick. They prevent you from having the lifelong and horrible, recovery time from them. It's when you don't have the vaccine where you experience all the effects of it.
Yeah, it's where the germ can actually invade your body.
Yeah, and then that's where everything kind of goes downhill from there. And it's definitely popularized a lot more. Just the belief of anti-vaxxing is through just Facebook and stuff, like what Connor just said. And it's been so popularized now that it's come to a thing where it's now people are kind of attacking each other based on the idea of should you vaccinate your children or not.
So if we're gonna talk about this, establish that proven science has proven that vaccines are completely safe, unless other medical conditions like allergies or being affected by it. But other than that, they're completely safe, and they don't have any repercussions on their children. Which, when anti-vaxxers try to refute that, or whatever,
Refute.
Shut up. Refute that, they can't hold ground, and it's known that they're safe. So when people try and say that they're anti-vax and try to prove that, then it's just stupid, honestly, in my opinion, that they're endangering their children or endangering other people's children just because they don't want their fear of autism, which is completely proven false, is completely unjustified.
Yeah. And I also want to bump in real quick and say that I, like a couple of minutes ago, applied for a anti-vax group so that maybe if by the time this podcast, like a little later in it, we might be able to get some actual examples from a Facebook group. So I'll let you know if that happens or comes through.
And a lot of people are trying to like tell people that a lot of like pop culture now. Sorry for standing, but a lot of pop culture now, they're making fun of the anti-vaxxers because they know they're wrong, right? And I feel like it's a way to get to people like to talk about anti-vaxxers, and not to be like attacking of anyone, but they definitely are just kind of like complete morons when it comes to the idea of anti-vaxxers.
There's not really, honestly, at this point, with the complete refusal to accept like facts and proven stuff, there's not really any other way to describe them other than just, ignorant and moronic, because they're intentionally putting their children, which, you're supposed to care about your children more than everything, in harm's way because of their ignorance and wanting to find a bad guy in every situation. In this case, the government.
And I get where you see that a lot, and I just want to point out before we continue talking about this, is that obviously this is a podcast directed mainly towards teens and schools, but I want to point out that hey, this is definitely a more so adult issue, but I want to connect it to you guys because a lot of teens' underdeveloped brains will lead to following what their parents believe in a sense, if you kind of get it. But if your parents are anti-vaxxers, they're going to start teaching their children about how bad vaccinations are, and then that'll lead to potentially your future children not being a thing anymore. So we want you to vaccinate so that they can be successful in life without having to die so early.
Yeah, that's true. Before we get into stats about measles outbreaks in the past couple of years, I kind of want to talk about really what herd immunity is. Herd immunity is, like I said earlier, I briefly touched on it. The purpose of the measles vaccine is it doesn't completely disappear in a way. The vaccine makes it so that your body doesn't experience the effects of the disease. The disease is still there. There's still a possibility that you can carry it, but you and the people around you don't get affected by it because you and the people around you are vaccinated. However, if somebody who isn't vaccinated goes into a group of vaccinated people and a couple of those vaccinated people have the disease, give it to them, and then they go back to a community of not vaccinated people, then it spreads, and the unvaccinated people's immune systems and bodies experience the effects of it. So that's kind of how herd immunity works. Everybody has it except one, then it will lead to an outbreak in it, essentially.
And that's basically what causes the 2014 Disneyland outbreaks, which happened.
That was 2015.
2015, sorry. And that basically the herd immunity, and there were 149 cases in the U.S. that were reported, mainly linked to California in Disneyland. And it's just because people who come overseas, say Orthodox Jews who did a pilgrimage to Israel, they may contract it over there, but they're vaccinated, so they don't get affected by it. But they come back to say Disneyland, where there might be children who are unvaccinated by their parents or just haven't gotten there yet. They're going to be affected by it, and they're going to get the disease. And that's just how the herd immunity affects us in general. So if one of us is not vaccinated and we go somewhere just like that, we're gonna have the same experience, and we're gonna contract it.
Yeah, really. And just last year, in 2018, the U.S. experienced 17 outbreaks. And again, a majority of those ones, the ones in New York State and New Jersey, most of those outbreaks were from Orthodox Jews that didn't get vaccinated. And it was associated with travelers who brought measles back from Israel. And that's sort of the fact that they got the disease from somewhere and brought it back to their community where people weren't vaccinated caused everybody around them to feel the effects of it.
And it could be even the reverse, where they get it when they're vaccinated, but bring it back to another community, like in Ohio, where the Amish community had this exact thing happen to them, where someone had traveled off, got it, and then brought them back to a horde of people who don't have it. So that's where a huge outbreak happens.
Yeah. I also want to point out that a majority of anti-vax parents are actually vaccinated. Like, their parents had it done on them. The issue is when the adults could be carrying the disease as well, and they just don't know it because they're vaccinated and they aren't showing symptoms. But also, like, they could just give it to their kids without even knowing it by not vaccinating them, and that's dangerous.
Yeah, and it seems a bit hypocritical that they're vaccinated, but they don't even want their children to be vaccinated. If they lived that long without being affected by these wipe diseases like polio or measles, why do they think their children are going to experience the same thing when they didn't go through the same, like, get the vaccines that they got when they were growing up? It just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, you'll find a lot of stuff in terms of anti-vaxxers really doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, because, like, you see that, like, when they're vaccinated, all of a sudden they don't believe in vaccinating their children when their parents probably got them vaccinated, you know? So it's that whole thing. It's like, yeah, I'm restating it again, but, like, yeah, being hypocritical and stuff like that. And, I mean, now it's become to a point of concern where doctors themselves have, like, I remember there's a post on Reddit in, like, the anti-vax one of the subreddits, but, like, they had, like, little, like papers saying, like, please, like, vaccinate your children and stuff like that, because you don't want to say sorry to the parents that are going to be, like, infected by other people, you know? I mean, but I don't know how to explain it, but that's just one of the few examples, and there's a lot more examples that we could probably dive into, because that's definitely a good way to kind of dive into, like, anti-vaxxers and why they're kind of popular? I don't know.
Yeah. Part of the evidence and sort of, like, I kind of wanted to take quotes from, like, Facebook groups against vaccination, because that's where a lot of echo chamber stuff happens. But unfortunately, I haven't been able to get into that group yet. They haven't accepted the request. So we just decided to go on a subreddit called VaxxHappened, which is a bunch of Facebook screenshots from these groups of anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, and there's one that we found on here. I'm going to read it word for word because it's posted. So it says, 55 deaths reported so far. I was under the impression that children do not die from measles and is a normal part of growing up. Can someone please shed light for us concerned parents? My 2-year-old has not had any shots so far, and I am quite worried about this outbreak. So just talking about outbreak in central Luzum. I'm not sure where that is because we can't get the actual article. But it's this education or uneducation around vaccines that causes a lot of the problems, and parents should be educated when they decide to have children about how vaccines are safe and what they do to prevent these diseases.
I think especially the scary part of this is that the person who wrote this, like, was under the impression that children do not die from measles. And that sort of shows how society as a whole has forgotten about how truly horrible measles as a disease is, because we haven't had to deal with it in such a long time because of vaccines. We have another example from the subreddit still. A lot of the points we're going to bring up from Reddit/Facebook, in this case, are going to be from this subreddit. Another word-for-word post. I was court-ordered to vaccinate my son because his father pushed it to that point. I presented everything I could come up with as evidence for why I do not believe vaccines are in his best interest, and the judge sided with my ex-husband. I am devastated and heartbroken, and so scared that doing this will cause him to never be the same again, or worse. However, I don't think this judge made it very clear that he will give primary custody and sole managing conservatorship to my ex-husband, and then he will go get him vaccinated his way. I am trying to do single-dose shots and detox, though I'm not really sure how to detox. But does anyone have any other suggestions? I am in tears as I write this because I'm so terrified of these shots. My little boy is 4 years old now, so healthy and hardly ever sick. I am broken. Any help, please? Because I need it. There's a lot of unpack in this, mainly because, I mean, she kind of lost a good chunk of custody of her kids because she refused to vaccinate. Because his dad actually, like, wanted him to be happy and healthy, while this mom preferred, her tinfoil hat in a way.
These people feel like they're dealing in absolutes. Just because their kid is hardly ever sick doesn't mean that they're not going to get sick.
Yeah.
So it's a not only is it a miseducation or uneducation, it's a mindset that they have that because something is as how it is right now doesn't mean it's going to be like that in the future. They believe that's going to keep going how they believe it's going to be like a linear graph basically instead of just being unlinear, and just like how life changes, they think it's just going to stay that way.
Yeah. Another thing that we're going to cover later in this podcast, I think, is going to be detox and how dangerous that is, along with other natural remedies such as the
essential oils.
Essential oils is another common one, and how dangerous and ineffective these actually are.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of scary how she said she was in tears because she's so terrified of these shots, even though, again, I can't tell because I don't know this person, but chances are she's probably vaccinated herself, and she's just refusing to get these for her son, too. So, assuming that the court didn't do anything, her son wouldn't have been able to enjoy life the same way as she had because he would be having to deal with a bunch of diseases that are preventable.
Yeah. And I feel like it's definitely justified. I mean, I don't think it's too justified, but at the same time, it's definitely leaning towards super justified of not removing most of the custody of her child. Because if, let's say that she's probably gonna try to stop the dad from having the vaccination happens because of how emotional she is about being anti-vax.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't to say she's a bad person. This is more just she does not know what's actually good for her child. And a lot of parents don't know that in the first place, but it's a learning curve. And so it's better to just, teach them what way is best for their children instead of just completely outright removing the children from their lives. And that's going to have a negative effect on the children. That's a completely different topic about that. But just because she doesn't want to vaccinate her kids doesn't make her a bad person. She just needs to just better her understanding of and mentality towards vaccinations.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We're not saying any of these people are bad people in a way. We're just pointing out the fact that they have been fed loads and loads of misinformation, and they have a warped view on vaccinations and a lot of other stuff. Where the bad people come in is when we get to the alternative stuff and the multi-level marketing,
and also strictly thinking of sorry to cut you off, but also thinking of strictly thinking that don't vaccinate your children. If you strictly believe in that and that's it, and you won't take the time to listen to someone else, I think that's when it also becomes you as a bad person, of because you don't want to accept information because of what you believe, and you'll always try to disprove things, and that's obviously natural, and we always try to disprove each other all the time, but at some point there's going to be facts and something's going to be right over something else.
Yeah. This next one, it's really short, and the original post or comment was actually by somebody who's sane, and the anti-vaxxer actually responded to it. So, my son has autism. This is the sane person, by the way. My son has autism. 4 people on his dad's side have autism, and 1 with Asperger's. None vaccinated. Stop. The doctors have studied that show it's genetic. Don't connect the two things that have never been proven correlated. And then the anti-vaxxer says, were you vaccinated? The autism may be caused by the parents' vaccinations. That's kind of scary because this wasn't said in the original paper that a lot of anti-vaxxers cited, and it wasn't said in a lot of the sources, quote-unquote sources I say, that are used by them. This is stuff that's purely been made up because of them being in an echo chamber, and they've come up with this on their own. And I think creating more misinformation like that, while it doesn't bring anybody else in to their point of view, it reinforces their group's point of view, and it makes it really dangerous and way harder to get them to see what's actually proven and to get them to drop that mentality of being anti-vax.
I mean, yeah, if you think about it from their point of view, they think that vaccinations do have a side effect, which is the autism, which, if it was true, would be understandable why they don't want to vaccinate their kids. They don't want to take that risk of having autism. But this is completely disproven. Unless your kid has, or you have medical issues that, some people have seizures when they get vaccinated or just have an allergic reaction. Unless they go through that, there's no reason because autism or any diseases isn't really a thing. Some might say the flu shot, but the flu shot isn't really a vaccine. It's more just a protection. The flu shot is more just building up an immunity to the actual flu through your immune system. But unlike vaccines, the flu shot doesn't outright stop you gain that virus. Vaccines, on the other hand, will stop you from getting that virus, or like that's why polio and measles have been eradicated from our modern world until recently. And just these people don't understand that, and although they do have a valid concern, it's not a real concern backed up by facts.
That's actually a good point, Jason. There are like real medical reasons not to get vaccinated, and these are like actually based on facts and medical conditions. For example, according to the CDC website, there are some reasons not to get the MMRV vaccine, which is measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella. I hope I pronounced those right. For example, having a weakened immune system, such as cancer or HIV, and being treated for these, such as with radiation or chemotherapy. Recently, having a blood transfusion can also cause problems, so you should wait and get doctors' opinions on it. And having tuberculosis and such. But these are all decisions that your doctor will know or should know and should give you the information on. You shouldn't make these decisions yourself, because it's similar to just going on WebMD, searching your symptoms, and just saying, oh, I guess I have, pneumonia now that I'm having a slight cough. But it's very important that even if you don't trust your doctor's opinion 100%, you have to go to somebody that knows what they're doing. So if you want a second opinion, go to another doctor.
Yeah, like, as you said, those doctors they spend 4 to 8 years of their lives studying to be the person that gives you advice. They're not just there for no reason.
That's true.
And similar, as you said, for the polio vaccine, it's even less of a, who should not get the vaccine. From the CDC, they say if the person getting the vaccine has a severe or life-threatening allergy, or if the person getting the vaccine is not feeling well, that's the only two reasons they give for why the person should not get the vaccine.
Not feeling well, just to preface this, is having a mild illness like a cold isn't a reason not to get it. It's severely ill. You should wait to recover until you get the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not like getting a cold is going to stop it from working too much, but it might have a side effect if you do have some more serious concern.
Yeah, and speaking of side effects, there actually are side effects that can happen, though they're pretty rare, except for, on all of the on the CDC website, all of the vaccines have a minor side effect of a sore arm from injection, which is it's something that's going to happen. That's just the nature of it. But stuff that's really, really rare, such as a rash all over the body, a seizure, or deafness, these are really severe, really, really rare side effects for the MMR vaccine. There's risk involved in it, but because of how low the risk is, there's absolutely no reason you should not be getting a vaccine because of these risks.
Yeah, just like you said, the risks are just so low. Just even for the polio vaccine, the risks are only just sores, or just like any vaccine, you could faint after having it. But it's so low that there's no reason really not to receive these for your kids or just for yourself. Unlike other vaccines, the polio one, which has basically been eradicated, is so minimal in risk that, again, as I said, there's no reason to. But, let's see, with the rabies, there's mild problems that could come up, like soreness or redness, and swelling, or headache and nausea, or even a moderate problem, which is just hives. But even though there are these side effects, they do not outweigh the reward that you get. The reward is so much better of just being alive, basically, or not having to deal with the rabies for your life because it's not going to kill you. Or unlike polio, where just if you get this vaccination, you and your child will stay alive and not die from polio. So there's no reason that these side effects give to justify not getting them.
Yeah, and even if you live through polio, you're screwed up for life. You have to be in an iron lung for the rest of your days.
Well, iron lung is outdated.
Well,
yeah, it's just a ventilator now.
It's true, it is a ventilator, but it
still
used to be an iron lung.
Yeah, you will have lasting side effects throughout your life, and it's not even just having it and getting through. It's the experience of it too. Polio, a lot of the time, people suffer from anywhere from 1 to 4 amputations, which is a shit ton. And having to
that's literally all of your limbs.
It is all of your limbs. Having to go through that alone is not getting a vaccine.
So you basically just become a chicken nugget.
You do become a chicken nugget.
Okay, but yeah, obviously I'm not talking a lot because they know what they're doing. But now I think we went over literally everything. I think.
Yeah,
And
we've gone over a lot of the facts, so now if you were here mostly just for the facts about it, we're more gonna go into our opinions on it, and Raynele, I'm pretty sure is just gonna end up ranting about it.
Well, I mean, you guys are gonna be part of it too. You guys. Obviously,
Yeah,
I want to get your
you
opinion.
have your opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, but like honestly, it's just back to your goddamn children. Honestly, it's just so fucked when you don't vaccinate them because they're gonna die off so fast. Not. I'm not trying to be like, hey, you're murdering your child, but that's basically what you're doing. You know.
I mean, with the herd immunity, your child may live, but there's the risk of also just killing other people.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even just a risk to your own children. It's also a risk to other people. So it's like, yeah.
Not that it's like it would be okay if it wasn't for like the fact that it harmed others, but it would be less severe if it harmed others. But the fact that your ignorance can get other people's children and other people hurt and killed and make them really sick is just kind of selfish and completely unacceptable.
Yeah, or make them into a nugget.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, we're laughing and all, but like this is still a serious issue. But we try to get some fun out of this. Obviously, this is such a serious topic. It's kind of a depressing topic in a sense.
It really
that we really need to bring some positivity into this, and we still trying to prove the point. Like, hey, vaccinate your children. I'm gonna restate that a bunch of times, but it's something that you really need to do because we don't want others or your children to die off because you decided to not let a needle poke into them. And I get it. Maybe some of you are afraid of needles, or some of you just like you've done research, quote unquote. But just do it. Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, needles can be scary, but like Connor here,
yeah,
you have a fear of needles.
I'm like deathly scared of needles. Like when I had to get cavities filled and they had to do the shots into my gums, they had to give me like so much laughing gas for me to even let them near my mouth with a needle. But you know, I still would manage to get through my vaccines, even though I was scared out of my mind. It's like, would you rather be scared of a needle, or would you rather be scared because you're gonna die from smallpox? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, see, even if you are afraid of needles like Connor, there's ways to get around it. There's this video of the baby on Reddit that we saw earlier when we were researching it about a doctor who was basically just distracting the baby, making him happy, and in the middle of doing that, just injected the vaccine, and then baby barely even noticed, barely even flinched.
Yeah.
So it's like, even though you may be scared of these needles or just the procedure in general, it's a temporary pain for a permanent solution. So even though you have to go through that, it's gonna be so much beneficial for you. And I personally would rather have to go through that pain, even though it's very little, and then continue living.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of just cap off this episode because I mean we've gone through a lot and we've talked about it. I mean we don't have many examples personally, but like we have examples of like how we can kind of just like fend off anti-vaxxers
In a way.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to change the mindset of somebody who is ignorant and closed-minded, but what you can do is provide education so that more people don't fall into this trap of anti-vaccination. And that's really the only way we can get it, because, you know, the kids are going to die off anyways. Like, the select few who live, that sounded way more dark than I meant it to be, but it's true.
We're laughing silently after he said that.
I'm so sorry. That came out wrong, but you know what I mean. Like, a lot of them are going to die from these preventable diseases, and really, the only way to change the minds of people who are ignorant and all that is, it's as much as I really hate to see it, is to actually have cases of these children dying due to the parents' ignorance. And it's not saying that it's like something that had to happen in the first place, because this all could have been prevented had people not started pushing this active anti-vax idea. Honestly, because of how little people are willing to open up to actual evidence, really the movement will slowly fade as the people who are for it start to, you know, actually lose their lives, and the consequences become deathly apparent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good closing point, Connor. Do you have anything else to say, Jason?
I just want to say, like, even though they are against vaccinations, even though it may not seem sane, they are still people, and they shouldn't be treated any differently. They do have a different view. They are still people. That doesn't mean they're bad, and shouldn't be angry towards them. Should be angry about what they're doing.
Yeah. So I mean that's probably it. I love you guys on this podcast. This is definitely a great podcast to do and great topic. I'd like to have you on like one of the more casual podcasts or the more less research needy topics. Because I mean, Jason, I definitely love your points and how you talk about it and how you introduce them, kind of like easily and stuff like that. So I want to see you in like one of the less research needy topics. And Connor, obviously, since you're a recurring guest, that's why you're still here.
That's the only reason.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
let's roll the outro. This is conversation. Whoops, I messed up. Stop the outro. Now start it. This is what you don't hear. Conversations about anything. That's it.